Just a quick snapshot of what we're going to be covering through IEI for the next few months. We're going to be providing a couple of workshops on renewable energy, starting with today's. We're going to talk about local outreach strategies, and then we'll work on preparing your pitch. And we'll do some small group pitch support through planning, and then provide some opportunities to do a final dry run of your demonstration with us to receive feedback before you have that big pitch due that's due in June. So you'll get more information from us, but I wanted to just kind of put that out there and so you have a face to all of that that's coming towards you. So for today's session, we're going to be focusing on renewable energy trends from the regulatory perspective. And I'm excited to have Eric Smith, our Executive Director here at UACI. He's going to be moderating the session, and we have a wonderful speaker that we're really honored to have today. Lea Marquez-Peterson is the Arizona Corporation Commissioner, and we've had the chance here to work closely with her in Southern Arizona because she has had a lot of her growth here in Tucson near us, but she's now working through the Arizona Corporation, and so she's had a lot of success and brings a lot of knowledge to this position. She's been recently elected in the last couple of years to the Arizona Corporation Commission. She's the first Latina to serve in a stateside office in the state of Arizona. She's been an entrepreneur and supported Arizona's small business, and brought a lot of resource to the economic development here in Southern Arizona and now throughout the larger region. She's been the Hispanic Businesswoman of the Year for the U.S. Hispanic Chamber, former President and CEO of the Tucson Hispanic Chamber, Executive Director of Greater Leadership Program for here in Tucson. But also she's owned and operated a business brokerage firm and a chain of gasoline and convenience stores, which brings her, this is broad wealth of knowledge that's grown from different areas. So Lea, we're so excited here to have you here, and I'll turn it over to Eric.
Really, really excited to have Lea here. The one thing that I will say as we talk about her role as an Arizona Corporation Commissioner is that this is not a role and this is not a commission that just exists in the state of Arizona. And so while we're going to talk about some examples as it relates to the state, my hope is that what you take away from this conversation here is that these are things that occur throughout whichever state you might be located in. And there are folks like Lea, not as good as Lea, we're lucky to have Lea in our state, but there are folks like Lea across the nation who are doing this good work. And so gathering some of her perspective, from the state perspective here in Arizona will also be applicable to you no matter what state you're in. So Lea, thank you so much for being here today with us. Really, really excited to have you. And to start us off, can you give us just a little bit of history on yourself? Can you share with us a little bit about your professional journey and how you got to where you're at today as Arizona Corporation Commissioner?
No, absolutely. And thank you to Eric, to Casey, to Amanda for the invitation today. This will be hopefully a fun conversation, and I can give you some insight into the world of regulating the energy industry. I've grown up in Southern Arizona and always been very involved in the community. As you saw from the slide that Amanda shared, I have small business in my blood, I guess I'll describe it. My grandparents were small business owners, owned tortilla factories, turquoise shops, insurance businesses. My parents also own businesses themselves individually. My brother owns one. So it's really been something that I've grown up with, entrepreneurship. In fact, I got my degree in entrepreneurship from the University of Arizona before I went on to get my MBA at Pepperdine University. So when I came back to Tucson after college, launched my own gas station convenience store chain, which I could do a whole hour on just that. Very interesting. I love retail, love the industry, and went from there into business brokering, realizing that when I was a gas station owner, I was one of the few women. I was one of the few Latinos in the industry, even Latinos, even nationally, I think. I served on a national convenience store board and interacted with folks that own small chains throughout the country. Went on to do business brokering, which helps people buy and sell businesses, and had an agency of about 5 different agents under me in Southern Arizona. And again, one of the few women in that industry and Latinos. So I've always used that angle of my background as a competitive advantage. It's something that sets me apart and gives me a different perspective in whatever industry I tackle. I've led a number of different nonprofits. One of them, the Tucson Hispanic Chamber, very proud of our work there. We grew the Hispanic Chamber over about the 10 years I was there from about 300 members to close to 1,800 member businesses. You didn't have to be Hispanic to be part of the chamber. It was really about reaching and growing and scaling your business model. So probably much like this program you're in here, we would just try to provide information, education, collaboration, connections throughout the state, throughout the region, even in northern Mexico, because we did work in that area also, to help folks grow and scale their businesses. So really enjoyed that and was there about 10 years helping entrepreneurs from around our area. When I got the political bug, I had done a lot of advocacy in my role at the chamber. A lot of times business owners are just too busy to step out and go to a council meeting or meet with your state senator or whatever it may be. So I did that. And I would also provide that, I call that filter. So it wasn't you asking as an entrepreneur, it was me as the chamber representative, so that you had kind of that bridge between you and the elected official. So I worked with federal officials, state, local, got involved in all kinds of issues that impacted primarily small businesses in Arizona, which led me to run for office later when there was a vacancy in a congressional seat. I ran for Congress here in Southern Arizona in 2018. First time I'd ever run for anything, which was super interesting. Someday I'm going to write a book about that. And ran in an area that is along the border. So a lot of different issues that we're facing in Southern Arizona. I won my primary election, but lost the general election. And while I was kind of contemplating what to do next, because I decided to leave the chamber, it had been, again, almost 10 years, the governor's office called. So, I didn't lobby for this opportunity. It just, the governor I knew well, because I had worked on his campaign and had interacted with him when he was our state treasurer, reached out and said, hey, I think you'd make a great corporation commissioner. I'd like to appoint you, even though it's an elected seat. We have a vacancy. So I said, I'm so honored, sir. Let me Google this, see what it's about, because I didn't really know much about the Corporation Commission, and realized just how vital this commission is to our state. And I'll get into kind of your last point on the slide here, Eric, and then we can double back. But what is a commission? So now I'm a regulator, and I regulate the electricity industry, water, gas, and wastewater. I tackle railroad and pipeline safety. I incorporate every business in the state with my fellow commissioners. There are 5 of us on our board. And then I also tackle securities fraud. So we pretty much impact most every family and business in the state with some kind of rule or policy we're setting. And you might ask, why are these industries regulated? They're regulated because they're monopolies. So when you moved into your home, you didn't get a choice on your electricity company or your water company or your gas company if you have gas. We set territories. And because of that, we as regulators, I really think of us as like the customer liaison. I am sitting now in this elected seat because I later went on to win my election for a 4-year term. And I'm a statewide elected official, but I'm there representing the voice of the ratepayers in Arizona, whether they're paying for water or energy or gas. And I'm providing that perspective. So my priorities as a commissioner and in the states you're in is really about reliability of energy and water. We can get into that too. There's a lot of issues in Arizona going on. The affordability of energy and water, and then that customer connection or transparency so that ratepayers throughout the state realize they can reach out to one of us as commissioners and we can represent their voice. And I'll stop there, Eric, because I know I've been giving a monologue for a little bit.
No, I'm sure that we're all just like me, can keep on listening. And I do want to dive a bit deeper into your role as a corporation commissioner. But before I do, because of the theme of why we're here, and because we're so lucky to have you, can you speak a little bit more to you're a trailblazer, right? Business owner, somebody who's ran a very, very successful chamber operation, and of course now in your role with the state, having done so as a trailblazer, as a Latino woman, can you talk about maybe some of the barriers that you had to overcome, or maybe some of those uncomfortable situations and some of those rooms that you had to walk into and really take ownership over? Were there some things that you had to really battle, in your role being a Latino woman who is a leader now throughout the state?
That's a good question. I guess it's kind of a mindset. I never thought of hurdles or burdens. For me, I mentioned it earlier, I thought competitive advantage. Maybe it's the family I grew up in or our entrepreneurial area in which we all focused as my brother and I were kids and moving on with our parents and so on. But when I walked in a room and it was people that didn't look like me or didn't have my background or were all men, I always thought, okay, boy, I really stand out in this crowd. What difference can I make? What perspective can I provide? And I think being a business person, I knew that the demographics, I mean, we're at least half female in most of the country, in Arizona, we're about 35% Hispanic. So boy, I bring a pretty valuable perspective to this company, to this nonprofit, to this state agency, whatever, that they may not have representatives with my background sitting on those seats. So I have sat on a lot of boards. I'm thinking 30 or 40 different nonprofit boards or commissions or councils or things of that nature. And I've always been aware that when I sit down, what perspective or background can I bring to this area? The other thing in Arizona, and I don't know how many are from border states on this call, but a lot of our wealth is in northern Mexico. We have a lot of huge corporate developments and activity going on in northern Mexico. And that was a great perspective I could bring with my relationships cross-border because I grew up in the Tucson area and ran the Tucson Hispanic Chamber. So I think that bicultural kind of perspective was really valuable also. And again, I never looked at it, I guess, as a burden or a hurdle. Oftentimes, like I mentioned, I was a gas station owner. I was 28. I had 6 gas stations, 50 employees all around Tucson. And I previously worked for an oil company, so I knew how it worked, right? I knew, own or lease my own land, control my assets, and so on. So I stood out because there weren't other people that looked like me or had my background. And so nationally, there was a board that all the big companies served on: Coca-Cola, Anheuser-Busch, ExxonMobil, you name it. And I was selected to represent independent retailers because I provided a border state community. I was female, I was young, I'm Hispanic, and so on. So what a great advantage. I mean, so I guess that's just one example of where I've really tried to always work, whatever background I'm bringing to the table, what different perspective can I provide?
Oh, that's wonderful. And I like your perspective on your perspective as well. I really appreciate that. And so now, as Arizona Corporation Commissioner, you gave a brief overview of, what your role is and what you do. Do you mind maybe diving into, one or two of the mechanisms that you use? How are some of the ways that you as an Arizona Corporation Commissioner can affect some of those things that you're looking to affect when it comes to water and power utilities?
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'll step back even nationally, because I know folks on this call are from all different states. There are about 210 commissioners like me across the country. We're in all 50 states. Some of those boards or those commissions are 3 people, some are 5 people. Most of them are appointed by the governor or your state legislature. And there are about 7 states like Arizona where we're elected. So we're a little unusual in that regard in the commission space. We regulate pretty much across the board electricity. Most do water, most all do gas. But then they have a variety of different things commissions regulate, whether it's wastewater like we do, or could be trash. We do incorporate businesses. Others will tackle other parts of the transportation. I mean, they get involved in different things across the state. So my homework for all of you on this call is to Google your Public Utility Commission or your commission, whatever it's called in your state, and know those names and see who's there and who you may know and how helpful they can be for you. Eric asked me to kind of touch on some top issues as it relates to kind of energy or water. I'll start with electricity. We are one of the fastest growing states in the country here in Arizona. Phoenix, just north of us, has so many projects and things going on, as has Tucson. Tucson just announced a huge battery factory that's being produced, I think 1,000 employees within our community. So there's a lot going on. And with all this economic development comes increased demand for energy and water. And so we are involved in a lot of the conversations as companies are looking to come to our state in terms of what kind of resources will our utilities have to be able to provide that now or in 2 years or 5 years, or whenever this company's coming, and how is it sustainable? If you think of where Arizona is on the map, we are bordered by California, and then we've got Texas not too far away. And those are 2 major players in the nation, and both have had their own energy issues. From my perspective, California has made political policy decisions that have negatively impacted their reliability. So I've got to weigh that as a policy person or regulator and determine how do we transition to a clean energy future, which we are as a nation. How do we do that in a way that ensures that we have resource adequacy or we have reliability? So there are 100 things I could bring up there, Eric, but that's kind of the general way in which we engage. We ensure that we have the resource adequacy, and then we handle the rate cases. So I'm actually voting on rates that our utility customers pay. And we handle about 40 to 50 rate cases a year. We just did the big gas company here in Arizona called Southwest Gas. We've got our two big electric utilities, APS and TEP are their acronyms. They're coming up in the next couple months. And then we handle a lot of water utilities. If you've seen any of the national press, there's a lot of concern on the West of, water adequacy. And do we have enough water for the future? And there are some very innovative things that our former governor did, Governor Ducey, our current governor is working on. A lot of smart people working on this issue on how are we going to have resource adequacy related to water. But when you build like a residential subdivision in Arizona, you need 100-year water assured supply. And we're having some challenges with that in different pockets throughout Arizona. Mm-hmm. So we regulate about 300 private investor-owned water utilities, again, that are monopolies, right? They've got this monopolistic structure where you didn't get a choice when you moved to that community. That's the water company, because we approve the territory, we approve the rates, we approve capital investment they make sure that that water as it's coming out is high quality, working with our Department of Environmental Quality and so on. So we're really, I'd call us wonky. We're very detailed in what we're doing in all of these different industries. And this is what we do day in, day out, is focus on these very specific industries that are vital to the continued economic growth for Arizona.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, a few tidbits there that I didn't even know about the community that I live in, such as when you have a development, how do you satisfy 100 years worth of water flowing underneath it? Pretty interesting. And so as we kind of think about the audience that we have here and now drilling down into, maybe some of the things that affect our entrepreneurs on the call, when it comes to innovation, and we'll talk about this broadly as it relates to the role, actually, Amanda, I'm going to poke on the question right before there. When it comes to innovation, as it relates broadly to anybody in any state, of course, utilizing Arizona as an example, a lot of the stuff that you just spoke about, I think we all generally understand, right? We all get power to our homes, we all get water to our homes, we all use these things every day. But when it comes to new innovation in your space, specifically as it relates to renewable energy, how does a corporation commissioner play a role in bringing new innovation out of the corners of a state and into the forefront of the work that you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we absolutely, in my 4 years as a commissioner, I've seen so much innovation and new technology in this space. And I'll start with envision a pie chart. In Arizona, our energy mix is about 32% nuclear, about 30% coal, about 28% or so natural gas, with the remainder 11-12% being renewable energy today. But that is yesterday, right? What we are seeing the future from APS, which is our biggest electric utility. They've made a commitment of 100% clean energy by 2050. TEP's, which is the Tucson electric utility, has made a commitment of 70% renewable energy. I think it's by 2040. So you see this across the nation. So look up your own utilities in your states, because it should be right on their webpage that shows you what their commitment is to clean energy, because pretty much everybody has got one at this point throughout the state. In our case, in order to reach that clean energy goal that each of the utilities have set, we've got to do that in a number of different ways. They have not figured out the entire formula in order to get 100% clean energy by 2050. So your technologies, your innovations are vitally important. What I have been able to do as a commissioner is lead an effort on, and this is probably more detailed than you want to know, but an all source RFP. So meaning when a utility puts out an RFP to procure new energy in the state, rather than specify that it's natural gas or it's whatever it is, I pushed a policy which got approved by my fellow commissioners that it's all source. That opens the door for all of you on this call that if you're going to bid on RFPs in the state of Arizona with our big utilities, you can participate in an all source RFP with your new technology, your new energy resource, if that's the business you have. That's a big statement in the state of Arizona. That's just one example of policies that we can put in place. The other stuff we've done, there's a lot of talk in the nation about virtual power plants. So the use of energy efficiency, the use of innovative models so that you aren't building a new natural gas plant, let's say, but you're using different tools in order to ebb and flow the energy based on the demand needed for that particular region or that utility. I'm a big supporter of that. In fact, I'm speaking at a national conference on virtual power plants coming up in February. But that embrace of virtual power plants and a pilot project that we were able to get approved through the commission, through APS, again, our big electric utility company in Phoenix, that again opens the door for innovation and maybe ideas you have for some of that. I mentioned kind of my national involvement, and I've done the same kind of involvement with my energy hat on. There's an organization called NARUC, National Association of Regulated Utility Commissioners. So all 210 of us are members of this group, and we're gathering in February in Washington, D.C. for our big conference in the fall, where we talk about and hear from panelists and speakers and companies for all these new ideas that are happening in other parts of the state. In that regard, at NARUC, I'm the vice chair of the water committee. I have a real passion around small water utilities because we've got lots of issues throughout the nation, but I'm also part of the nuclear subcommittee. I'm a big proponent of nuclear. In Arizona, we have the largest nuclear power plant in the country called Palo Verde Nuclear Power Plant on the west side of Phoenix. What's happening in that space, I don't know if any of you are working on projects related to nuclear, but they're small modular nuclear that are mobile, that can be moved on the back of a flatbed, and all this innovation happening around there, and a lot of funding from the Department of Energy. There's also a lot of work on hydrogen. Maybe some of you are working on areas such as that. Just a lot of new ideas related to battery and battery storage and longevity of storage. Things like that I get pitched at quite a bit. I'm not a buyer, I'm the policy person. So what I tell people is love to hear it. I get excited about all these new ideas because of my own entrepreneurial background. But the ultimate company or procurement is the utility companies. One of the things I was very proud to launch 2 years ago was a Supplier Diversity Summit at the commission. It'd never been done before. A couple other states do it, California, Illinois, I think Pennsylvania. But because of my background at the Hispanic Chamber, I went to our Class A and B, which are the largest electric, gas, water, and even some telecom companies, because we have limited jurisdiction in telecom, and asked them to come in and talk about their supplier diversity programs, working with women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, and veteran-owned businesses. I also wanted to know about their board diversity, and if they wanted to talk about their executive level diversity, great. First year we did it, a little rough. People didn't have data. You didn't quite know where I was going with this. The second year we just did it, it was great. We've created a dashboard. It's on our website, azcc.gov. If you click on my picture there, you'll see under policy statements, we have the dashboard there. And my plan is just to track it. I think, I forget the saying, I think Winston Churchill said it, what you track, you accomplish, or something of that nature. I'm just going to track it year after year so that companies can see, are they truly reflective of the community in the state they serve, whether it's in procurement or it's in board leadership. I would say generally, electric companies, gas companies, pretty advanced. Those are the larger companies. Water utilities have a way to go. So the larger the company, the more likely they've already put those kind of programs together. But I'm a big believer that you do business with your network and people you know. And if that's not your network, we need to create programs to, enhance that.
Wonderful. It's so funny because as you were talking, again, still learning a lot, but I also am very curious if the conference about virtual power plants is an in-person or a virtual conference. That's what I want to know as well.
I think it's in person in Washington, D.C., but there are a lot of different conferences around, and I don't know if there's an ability to zoom in, but I saw you put the link there. If you go to that NARUC website and register, there's probably a lot of interesting things to hear about. If you're in this space and you're in DC or the East Coast area, you might want to think about going. You just have to register to attend.
Absolutely. And so we talked a little bit about some of the mechanisms and policies that can be created to STEM innovation, right? And bring innovation to the work that you do and to our communities through these utilities. So moving on here, how does a state regulate energy? And then, maybe if I could tack on to that, how does new innovation, the fold in of, let's say, solar panels on people's houses 20 years ago, how do you regulate energy? And then how do you account for new innovation that contributes to our energy? What does that look like?
Yeah, so in Arizona, I'll speak to how we're structured. We were actually constitutionally created in 1912. So we are part of the Arizona Constitution, and it very much stipulates exactly what our purpose is. Beyond our commission, obviously we have a state legislature, we have gubernatorial energy offices in the past, and I know Governor Hobbs is putting one back together. So it's I think for us, pretty clear what our role is in terms of regulating the state's energy and water and gas and so on. We are ultimately, our purpose again is reliability and affordability. So think of all the issues related to these utilities related to that, whether it's what they're buying, what they're building, how they serve their customers, the rates they're charging. If you're familiar with the industry, we've had incredible natural gas price spikes recently. Some of it began with Texas and the freeze they had a couple of years ago, and even more recently, the Russian war with Ukraine. Just real impact on natural gas. Well, we will be dealing with that quite a bit this month in terms of the increased cost of natural gas to all the utilities and then ultimately to our ratepayers, right? So we'll be having lots of debates, I'm sure, related to natural gas, as will every commission, probably in every one of your states, because we're dealing with this across the nation. So all of those issues, I mean, I can read the newspaper and probably the whole state national sections, half of those articles relate to work I'm doing at the commission. Either it's policies that the federal delegation is tackling that could impact our energy structure or our grid here in Arizona, or the state legislature's back in session here in the state of Arizona, and they'll run through, middle of summer or so. And they've got about 20 bills that impact, our utilities or the work we do. So we're tracking that. But ultimately, the very detailed analysis is done by our staff, like agency staff at the commission. We have about 250 employees. We're hiring like crazy. So if anyone here is a energy law attorney, a utility analyst, a financial analyst, we're hiring. So please consider applying or sending your friends. But we have a lot of work ahead of us, and even more so in Arizona because we're growing so rapidly. So we have a lot of announcements of Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing sites being built, $40 billion expansion in the Phoenix area, or Intel, $20 billion expansion up in Chandler. A lot of those occurrences impact our grid, impact transmission. So the high level lines that go from, let's say, the state of New Mexico bringing wind into Arizona, you need transmission to get it into Arizona. We handle the transmission, the distribution, which are the lines within the city that bring energy around to your home and your business. We handle the resource mix, what kind of resources, and we're approving things that the utilities are doing, and ultimately capital investment that they want to make in that area, which could be hundreds of millions of dollars, just depending on what they're trying to build. So I try to really stay on top of the industry. For me, it's going to conferences, it's reading a lot of newspapers and magazines and white papers and things people send me so that I can stay on top of issues. The future is really solar and battery. I think it's pretty evident. We're just not there yet, right? I think hopefully a whole bunch of you are working on battery storage innovation. I attended the energy storage conference that was up in Phoenix last year just to get a feel from my perspective as a regulator, the safety of battery, lithium battery in people's homes and so on. As we grow this area, I want to fully understand that. I know there's a lot of different types of battery storage that are being proposed. Pretty exciting. Natural gas storage. I mean, there's lots of things people are talking about to really transition to clean energy. And the other piece that we work on is as we pull away from coal, and coal plants are closed across the country, but in Arizona, my focus, we're going to have what we're deeming coal impacted communities that can end up as ghost towns if we don't figure out some new economic development proposal or new industry or something to go into those areas. We had a big coal plant up in the Navajo Nation close right before I came on the commission. And I think it could have been done better. I think we could have left more assets there, and that's a whole other conversation, but we get involved in all of those transitions also.
Wow, wonderful. So I'm going to drill in now on the why, because you just spoke a little bit about, the fact that not only do the utilities have, large, lofty goals in terms of their renewable mix by 2040 or 2050. You mentioned some of the efforts that that the state is undertaking to support some of those efforts. From a regulatory perspective. So getting to the why. So how does increasing renewable energy in a state benefit our communities? And does it benefit the state from a regulatory perspective to bring in new technologies and shift our mix to more of a renewable energy mix?
Right. I mean, I think that's the ultimate question. Why are we transitioning? And we are because it reduces carbon emissions, ultimately air pollution. That's the big reason why. In addition to that, it also is a renewable resource, right? So if it's non-renewable, that means it's finite and we're using up our land's, finite resources. And to find something that's renewable, more attractive, more affordable at this point, wasn't when it started. So it was a subsidized industry, but now it's more affordable for the utilities and for customers. So there's definitely a reason why we are all embracing renewable energy, not even throughout the nation, but throughout the globe. What we're facing right now, and you're probably aware of this as entrepreneurs though, is a challenge in supply chain, right? Components and pieces. Right now, today, if you are going to launch a utility scale solar plant in Arizona and say you came before us and we voted on your plant, we've got a long queue, a long line for line siting, which means that the approval to interconnect with our grid. We have a committee of volunteers that serve on that capacity. They're appointed by us. And so right now I'm trying to tackle, how do we shorten that queue? How do we change the policies related to, all the different projects that are within the line siting committee? And that's something I'm going to be going before my own commission to ask for a vote from my commissioners, and hopefully I get 2 more to change the line siting process so it's not such a long line. The other reason to support renewable energy is, there's so much innovation, and the financial impact of that industry coming to Arizona just makes sense. We know that states across the nation, the globe, are tackling and employing renewable energy. But in Arizona, we are the sunshine state. I don't know how many days of sunshine we have, but 364 probably, or something like that. So I think there's no reason Arizona can't be the solar capital of the country. And we are doing all we can to increase our solar capacity. Just knowing, though, that when the sun goes down, very aware that the solar doesn't work. So we need battery, we need natural gas peaker plants, we need nuclear energy, we need hydrogen or whatever's in the future to supplement that solar so that we've got reliable services. I referenced earlier my concern with California and some of the policy decisions they've made that I didn't support. And I think from my perspective, California has switched to clean energy, not transitioned to clean energy. And so they have switched so quickly and made such political decisions there that they're having challenges with reliability and resource adequacy. And it affects us here as their neighbor in Arizona, because when they're having red alert, we're low, or it's a day everybody's got to not charge their electric vehicle or have different impacts to their grid. My feedback to my own utilities in Arizona is make sure we are covered in Arizona. We have a 15% reserve margin in case we have a major heat wave tomorrow, and then excess energy sell to California, and we make a lot of money on it when we do that. But that's not the way this should be happening. So, each state is making their own decisions, and it impacts the neighbors as we move, forward with clean energy.
Yeah, that makes total sense as well. And I looked it up, and depending on the source, it's somewhere between 280 and 320 days of sunshine a year in Arizona. So if you're looking for some of that sunshine, just come on down. Now's the perfect time.
That's right.
So kind of moving on to let's talk about trends for a little bit. So what are some of the current energy trends, and what are the large energy companies paying attention to? You had mentioned earlier storage being a huge need. I think it's storage might even be not just a trend, but just a necessity, right? If we're going to move to a larger solar mix. And even if you're talking outside of specifically solar, what are some of the current energy trends that you are seeing come to the forefront in your interactions with utilities and large energy companies?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with solar and then kind of work my way through. But solar in Arizona, we set as a commission a mandate in 2006, I believe it was, that 15% of our energy resources would be from renewable sources. When we think back to 2006, the industry wasn't quite there yet. So it was subsidized, in essence, by our ratepayers so that we could accomplish that solar mix at the time. And we're still working towards that. So there's a lot of controversy on whether it should have been subsidized or not. But now fast forward to 2023, and there's a lot of improvements, I think, that can be made in the solar industry. I've met with solar developers there's a big difference, I understand, from residential, distributed on your roof to community solar to utility scale solar, and those all utilize different types of panels. So panels are getting larger and smaller, more efficiently made. Still, largest percentage made in Asian countries or in India. A lot of them are shifting to. I wonder why they're not doing more with manufacturing in Mexico with the maquiladora relationships. I don't hear that in the solar industry. I find that strange. We did have a new solar panel manufacturer announcement in the Phoenix area, which is exciting. And we have First Solar up in Phoenix. But my understanding is they make a different type of solar panel that's not as easily distributed to residential. It's got a certain purpose. So I think we're going to see more innovation in the solar panel manufacturing world, especially with the increased focus by the Biden administration, and I think the state legislators and even ourselves at the commission related to domestic energy production or domestic energy independence. We are stuck right now, again, in this long queue where we're waiting on components and parts and projects that we thought would be online sooner or much later, because that's happening across the nation. I also have a particular interest in agrovoltaic, which means that you would put the solar panel out in the field on a utility scale solar. And already the technology exists where it shifts with the sun, which you're probably all aware of, but this would be dual use of the land. So in Arizona, and for those not from here, might not realize, we're like the lettuce capital of the country. Most of your lettuce comes from Arizona. We do a lot of other types of vegetables here. Wouldn't it be great as we add more and more utility scale solar if we have farmland underneath it, or goats or cows or something of that nature, so there's dual use of the land and we don't have so much agriculture fighting solar industries and so on. I think there's more that can happen, and I know right now the USDA has put some grants together and they're working with some companies in Arizona, and I think in Florida, I'd heard also in Texas, I believe. So I think that's pretty exciting. I've also talked to a number of companies that are putting solar panels on canals. We have a lot of water canals in Arizona that's storing our water, and they're trying that, and the number of canals can generate enough energy to actually pay for the service. And so I've had a couple companies pitch me those ideas, which is pretty neat. If you move on then to wind energy, we don't have a lot of wind in Arizona, but we have seen our utilities and we've approved them buying wind energy from New Mexico and transmit that over the transmission lines into our state. We've had some exciting announcements from Nikola, which is Nikola, which is a hydroelectric large truck, like the large trucks you see on the freeway. They are coming in utilizing hydrogen fueling sites. We approved a project with them with APS, again, the big electric company, to utilize energy from our nuclear power plant to participate in a hydrogen project, which is a pretty cool idea to start. They're continuing to manufacture their big trucks here in Arizona in kind of Coolidge area or Casa Grande. So we're hearing a lot about hydrogen. You may be familiar that the U.S. Department of Energy put out a hydrogen hub proposal, which is funding from DOE to help states or regions or whatever group you pull together to pull these hydrogen projects together. Well, in Arizona, we did the same. We have a hydrogen hub project that includes UVA, ASU, lots of different entities that are involved in hydrogen, and we've proposed our own hydrogen hub proposal. And so we're hoping we win. I think they're going to only approve a few of those. A lot of activity in that area. Natural gas, we're hearing about some renewable natural gas projects, which is basically capturing cattle fumes and gases and then using it in some renewable fashion to provide energy. We approved a big dairy farm out in the Yuma area, which is on the west side of Arizona. And California paid for that renewable natural gas facility because they took all of that RNG, renewable natural gas, to California. But hey, it was great for us to get that funded in Arizona and to watch how this is going to work and what are the efficiencies and how do they streamline this as we continue. We just approved another one, I believe, down in southern Arizona area. So that's kind of exciting. Lots of conversation about natural gas storage. Is that something that's affordable? And, we have lots of conversations related to that. I see a lot of trends and innovative products in the energy efficiency area, whether it's, heaters in the home or devices that control your HVAC or weatherization in the home. There's probably 10 different categories, I'd say, of types of energy efficiency programs that we either see pitched to us or pitched to the utilities. A lot of it's the coordination of many homes. So I know I met with a company that had acquired a whole bunch of homes in the Phoenix area, and they were rented, the homes to rent, and they controlled like the Nest thermostats on those homes, so that when we were having a particularly hot day in Arizona, they could be paid as a virtual power plant to, lower, or I guess increase the temperature of the homes and save so many kilowatts or megawatts throughout that area, like a virtual power plant, instead of the utility having to build something. So I think people are just taking a very innovative approach to, renewable energy, what it's going to take. Some of it we haven't figured out the financial side of yet, like nuclear or hydrogen, very pricey. But I'm hoping those on the call here have come up with some great new idea or innovation that, can be pitched to our own utilities in the future.
Wonderful. And I didn't have to look this one up, but 90% of the leafy greens that everybody on this call eats actually come from the Yuma, Arizona area. 90%
Wow.
of leafy greens in the United States. So pretty impactful and important statistic there. You had referenced lots of new panel designs, right? And kind of described the difference between, commercial solar on like the first solar scale and utility level panels. And here at the Tech Park in Tucson, we have one of the largest testing and demonstration sites for solar technologies in the nation. And when we have new innovations come to, it's called the Solar Zone, oftentimes in the renewable energy space, they're looking to engage with the utility on a power purchasing agreement or something of that nature. And so I'm curious, for the benefit of the innovators on the call, and I know you can speak mostly to the state of Arizona, but does the role of a corporation commissioner at all include, the connection between innovations or startups like those that we have on the call with the utilities? Do you play a role in that at all, or do you typically stay out of that? How does that work? This way we do or don't have 50 innovators calling their corporation commissioners looking for a connection to their utility.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I'd say it varies based on the state. One of the things that some states like Arizona have pushed is, again, supplier diversity. I think that's helpful in getting folks engaged with the utility. The very first step, though, if you are ready, you're market ready, and you're going to start pitching utilities, it's relationships, it's getting registered as a vendor, it's attending their own procurement events that they have now. I think that's important. I think engaging with them at the conferences they're already attending, like NARUC and some of the others, EEI is another big one. Those are important. So your technology is not so cutting edge and just out there that nobody's going to take the risk. Because they're monopolistic industries, they're slow to innovation, right? What's their motivation? So you need to figure out a way in which to get in front of them, to be written up in industry magazines, perhaps, or newspapers. Like any industry, we have our own dozen different newspapers and magazines that we read related to energy. So you should be researching that for your particular area and making sure that you're writing about your new technology, your new area. The easy way commissions can help, if your new innovation is not so way out there, but it's something that's more accepted, is to pitch a pilot project. That's how we did Nikola and their hydroelectric trucks pilot. That's how we've done some of the energy efficiency things. Pilot projects, something that's more palatable, but it depends on your commission, whether they operate that way. And in Arizona, we've done a number of those.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we're running a little short on time. So what I'll ask, if there are folks online here that have a question, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'll ask one more question of Lea here, and then we'll open it up. But just to kind of maybe preemptively strike, if you have anything that you'd like to know from Lea, I'll be monitoring the chat here, and I'm happy to ask it on your behalf. So we kind of started the conversation with your unique lens, your diverse lens as a leader in this state, helping to regulate utilities. And I'll kind of end it on a similar note, but talking more about the diversity of the populations that have an opportunity to participate in the type of innovation that we're talking about. So how does diversity play a role in advancing innovation? And are there any model programs that you're aware of that assist states in ensuring that we're providing those opportunities to all populations, such as hub zones, or I'll even weave in, are there opportunities in tribal communities that that maybe can be provided to those populations to allow them to play on a more level playing field? So kind of bringing this all full circle, what are some of those programs that you've heard of, or what are some of those opportunities for those populations?
Yeah, there's a kind of a couple different things I could mention. First off, I'm very involved in a group called Hispanics in Energy. So it's a group that is national, that involves Hispanics or Latinos and who work for utilities, are commissioners. Actually, there are only 4 of us that are commissioners in the entire country that are Latino, which is a shame. So we need to improve that. But we've got commissioners there, you've got staff, you've got not as many entrepreneurs, but it's a place for you to plug in and make relationships. There's also an African American in energy. I think it's called Blacks in Energy. And then there's an Asian in Energy group. So if that suits you, fits you, consider that. There's a women's effort within NARUC to do mentoring. So they have a women's mentoring program, and they are assigning female commissioners to female executives and folks, and not only in the United States, but globally with folks that work within utilities or within staff. So there's some efforts in that regard. At the state level, it depends again on the state. We've embraced a supplier diversity program. So we're starting something in Arizona. Illinois is further along. California is further along, as is Pennsylvania. And I think Virginia has some effort. At NARUC, that national group I'm in, we have a diversity and inclusion subgroup that focuses on a lot of different efforts and issues. ESG is a hot topic, environmental, social, and governance in corporate America, and how the SEC is kind of regulating that in essence with some of the larger companies. So a lot of talk at our national conferences about ESG and what's this mean. In fact, I'm on a panel coming up at that NARUC conference, Beyond Virtual Power Plants. I'm also going to talk about ESG in Arizona and so on. Hub zones and different sectors like that, I'd say there's a disconnect in our state with those opportunities. Right now, if you were to bring an entity and you were going to be a manufacturer or some kind of business like that to Arizona, then I think the economic development folks would be pitching you hub zones and different opportunities like that. But I think if you're an innovator, you're coming from another state, not as applicable. My background, you heard, is Chamber of Commerce and kind of economic development. So I've made a point to reach out to our commerce department in our state. It's called the Arizona Commerce Authority, and present to their CEO, to their VPs, to their staff, so they understood what we do at the commission and how we can be helpful as they bring in new companies. And obviously they need energy and water, so top of mind the work we do. I'm also very concerned, as I mentioned earlier, about the coal impacted communities, which are rural, small, tribal in some cases. Not all are tribal, but so the emphasis we can put on rebuilding those communities now before even their coal plant closes, which we have dates in 10 years. We're closing this coal plant, that coal plant, because utilities have put that out publicly in their goals. We need to start having those conversations now, or those communities will be devastated and again be ghost towns. So I think, Eric, from that perspective, are there tribal programs? Yeah, there's added emphasis now, I'd say, across the country. And you've even seen money through some of the Biden administration federal funds focused on tribal communities, because so many of them are going to be so economically impacted by coal plant closures.